Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What?
Welcome to all our guests. I'm very happy to see you, and I hope you have lots to bring to our attention. I'd like to ask, are there any additions or comments on the agenda from the commission?
I have one. Under other topics, we have a pamphlet about the Chesapeake Bay Act. I just wanted to hand out to you guys, trying to ask you for more information, and I thought it would be best to just share it with everybody. So it's not really a discussion, but it's just we can track.
That's great, thank you. I'd like to, before we have public comment, are there any other additions or deletions from the agenda? We have a special presentation tonight that I'd like to hold before our public comment on planning commission issues. And I believe two representatives from the James Monroe Foundation are here, and we'd like to ask them now to make their presentation to us, and if we have any questions, we'll be able to ask you. Please come forward. I'm sorry. Are all in approval of the agenda? Aye. Sorry. Robert's Rules of Order, I'm very sorry.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Thank you for inviting myself and Ms. Bucky Dorr and to address the Planning Commission. I have a long history with Colonial Beach. Some of you may know me. Some of those of you who know me know that I'm Art Buswell, and those of you who don't know me, I'm still Art Buswell. So thank you for inviting us. I am Secretary of the James Monroe Foundation, and in a weak moment I agreed to become the superintendent of the James Monroe Birthplace Park and Tourism Center, which is on Route 205. Those of you who go to Oak Grove, I'm sure you take a look to the left and see the house coming out of the ground. A year ago, all we had was a hole in the ground, and now we have a framed house. I just left it. The shingles are going on the roof, and let me point out that the construction of that house is authentic. Those shingles are special made. The siding which it was on last week was special made, and the bricks in the foundation and the two chimneys were made in North Carolina in accordance with the way they would have been made in the 1700s. So I'm telling you, you will have an authentic 1700s house on your doorstep. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's going to be a boon, I'm quite sure, to Colonial Beach. Yes. Because we've already had a number of visitors as we've had it open Saturdays and Sundays for the past 6 years. But in that time, we've had between 350 and 450 visitors to the center. So you can imagine what's going to happen with the house being added to the agenda and the pathways down to the river. We already have a request from a canoe club to use the dock that is on Monroe Creek for a canoe expedition later in May, and we're looking forward to that. The purpose of the house is to give to the people of America an authentic replica of James Monroe, our 5th president's birth house, and we anticipate that we'll have a number of visitors coming to the area to visit that house. As you know, James Monroe was born there and lived there until he was about 13 before he went to William and Mary. And then he went from William and Mary into the Army. He is one of 2 presidents who served in the Army in Revolutionary time. And he was severely wounded and recovered from that and became a statesman, twice the governor of Virginia, and president, two terms. He also was instrumental in the acquisition of the Louisiana Territory. And as you may know, I hope, he authored the Monroe Doctrine, which to this day is part of our country's basic tenets towards South America, and was really put to the test during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Anyway, that's what's out there, and I hope that we have a lot of people coming from the beach itself to take a look at it and visit. It will be open next year, good Lord willing, we get it done, and we'll have tours of the house. And speaking of tours of the house, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the chief docent for the James Monroe Birthplace House, Miss Bucky Dorr, a longtime resident of Colonial Beach as well. Bucky?
I don't think I've ever known Art to not speak
No?
as short as that. I was getting comfortable, as he usually. Thank you. Is that okay now?
Bring it closer.
Okay.
I have some things that I want to share with you, and I want to first of all just kind of give you a little bit of handout. Okay, Deborah, would you take these up and here's one of each of the people up here and to the reporters. Now, what you're going to be receiving in this packet is a map of the proposed development of the park. A lot of it is still being developed, but a lot of it is already there. I think we have more done than we have yet to do, and we're just really, really thrilled about it. I want to just mention that Art says about the docents, Deborah Mills is one that's going to be working with me on it. I'm looking for local volunteers. It is important that we have local people manning the visitor center and being your points of contact, so that whatever questions you may have, if you want to go out there and take a look, I will do private tours, I will meet you out there pretty much at your convenience and show you what we have done, because we're so very proud of the work that the foundation has done. Now, looking at your map, get mine out here so I can look at it with you. The first page is the map that I got off of the James Monroe's website. What you have is as best we could as far as enlarging it, and of course it's not in color because the printer at the library is not a color printer. However, if you take a look at it, at the top of it, that part that's kind of sliced off and straight, that is Highway 205, and that's also known as the James Monroe Highway. I have been a little bit nonplussed when I talk to people about James Monroe birthplace, and they wonder where it is and what's going on out there. I've never been out there. People who have lived here many, many years have still not yet been out there to see what's going on. And I can't really blame them for that, because until recently there wasn't really very much to show you, because it was all wooded area. And you could point and say, now over there we're going to, whatever, and they would look and it'd be a patch of woods. So you can't really capture someone's imagination until you've got at least something that you can put before them and say, this will go there, this will go there. Well, that's what's been happening lately. We've got a lot of things in place now that we can show, and it's an exciting time to be a part of this project. For the first time, I think probably ever, community service has been a part of the graduation requirements. And part of that, of course, is working in a nonprofit, well, I don't mean nonprofit, I mean in a public place. If we can get young people involved out there to help with the tours, to serve as guides, to be in the visitor center, we can meet their SOL requirement as well as their community service, because it is historic. and there's a lot of history that we can share. Now, if you're looking at your map again, you'll see at that the entrance off of 205, that's that sliced part right across the top, it's U-shaped, and it's one-way traffic that takes you around that circle and then back around to the visitor center. And from there, you can have access to any one of the trails that you want to walk on. Now, the legend in the box, when you're looking at that top area right in here, that printing is just too small for you to read unless you've got a really good magnifier and a good light. But the legend that's inside the box says this area is being investigated and planned by the James Monroe Foundation. Mr. Buswell has told you about the Monroe Foundation, which has been in existence for a pretty good while, and they have done all of the work that you see done out there now. Now, just below that, that says existing visitor center and parking. The wording below that says 2003 circular loop and tree save area. And the last one says timeline walk beginning near the house foundation. The timeline walk is already in place, it's concreted, and it's that straight line that comes right straight down through the middle. That is the timeline walk, and embedded in that walk are various points of interest and times where Monroe was, highlights of his life and service that he did. Now, if you go back up to the entrance and come around to the bottom of the loop and follow that paved line down to the visitor center, you will see that the back of the house is well under construction. The house, as he said, has been under construction since, pardon me, since last fall. And there was hope that we would be a lot farther along, but there were a number of reasons, legitimate reasons for the delay. But now that the weather has warmed up, the bricks are going up, the chimneys are being built, the house has been sided, the roof is almost half shingled. The windows, you didn't mention the windows.
Windows are in.
The windows are in, but they were also made locally in Montrose, weren't they?
Not Montrose, just outside of Montrose.
They were made in Westmoreland County. They were hand-built by one artisan, and they were in there, and they had the kind of Waverly glass that you see in really old glass. It is really a magnificent structure. Now, it's not the big palatial structures that you might be inclined to think it should be, because the Monroes were a very middle-class family. James Monroe did not have a big inheritance, a lot of funds, a lot of money. James Monroe was a man of very ordinary means who did very extraordinary things. Now, the right of the loop, as you see on your map going around, is the east loop perimeter, and that trail goes all the way down to the bottom, and it crosses what is the boardwalk that goes across the little pond area that you see down there, and comes back up. You see that on the left of your map, and that comes right out to the end of the, to where the timeline starts. So just a gentle stroll is a wonderful walk out there. You're going through the woods, it's shaded, it's just absolutely lovely. People come out there all the time just to walk their dogs, and I walk mine out there a lot as well. So, and the park is always going to be free. There's never going to be a charge for that. That's pretty significant because we don't have a lot of public funding. We have private donations. People have donated significant amounts of money and items and time and labor, and we just, it's all been done just out of people who have a heart for it. And that's why we're really, really proud that we can offer this to you at no charge. Now, as you're coming down there, cross streets, you see there, think of those as an avenue with cross streets. Now, they're not entirely finished either. They have been cut through, and you can see where they're going to be, but they're still under construction as well. Now, in that area, at the top of it, the second, the first big hump that you see off to the side on the right there, there are two very, very historic cemeteries in there that I have discovered two of them. One of them is the Stewart family cemetery, and the Reverend Stewart is the first pastor of the First Baptist Church in Colonial Beach. So his grave is there, and his stone is still standing, but it's leaning significantly. So we really want to, at some point, address the needs of those cemeteries, at least to clean them out and try to raise those stones back up and fill in the graves that have hollowed out. We counted 36 graves in there one day, 36 that we could see and identify. And then there's another cemetery that's smaller that has World War I and World War II veterans buried in it. We have not yet discovered where the Monroe family cemetery is. We understand that that's on the property somewhere. I personally have not found it yet, and I don't think the archaeologists that surveyed the land did either. But we are of the understanding that it's there, and one of these days we're going to find it, and then we will give that some attention as well. Now, the docents that I have recruited are all local. We have Deborah Mills, and I'm calling her my Minuteman, because I can say, would you like to, and she'll say, what time do you want me there? She's very reliable and has become a good friend. She's a DAR sister. We are both members of the Lead Sound Resolutions chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and we've become friends through that, and she's really come on board with a great deal of enthusiasm. I'm very, very grateful to her. The other docents that we have are Ken Hayden, George Nelson, my son James Dorr, and myself. Those are the ones that I have pretty well confirmed that their time is committed. We have, the visitor center is open from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So we actually only have the months of June, July, and August that we need to have the visitor center manned, opened and volunteers in there. We need at least two to do that, because one needs to be in the visitor center at all time, and then the other one can walk about and talk about the property and answer questions and such. Once the house is open, we're going to need a minimum of 3, teams of 3, to do that on the weekends. If we have sufficient volunteers, then no one needs to work more than one weekend a month. And but it is Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 4, Saturday and Sunday from Memorial Day to Labor Day. It's not an odious job. It's a very pleasant job. You meet a lot of people. You have a chance to share your passion for history and just listen to what their stories are. It's fascinating. It's a wonderful job. The docents are basically housekeepers, you may as well say. We're the guides, the historians, the gardeners, the hosts and hostesses, and basic general managers of the property. And because we are local, we can get messages of importance to Art Buswell and Charles Belfield and Shelby Chandler and his wife Holly. I mean, they are all involved in it. And if something needs to be done or something needs to be attended to, one of them can say, okay, do this, and we'll take care of it, or call this, or contact somebody. They'll tell us what to do. But the immediate point of contact is a local person who can deal with that very, very quickly, whatever comes up. It's my plan to have a basic first aid class and a CPR training session through the fire department or the rescue squad for our docents, so that they can be ready should anything happen. God forbid it didn't, but should anything happen, we'd know how to deal with that and call the rescue squad. One of the things that I want to introduce this year also is one Sunday a month, which is only 3, one Sunday a month to have live music coming from the garden. We can get, trios of instruments, non-electric instruments, because there's nothing, out there to plug an amplifier into. But just have music coming from there once a month, and I think that would just increase the interest. The garden has been a major project that the docents have taken on this spring. We started actually last fall clearing out all of the weeds, because that garden was planted in 2003 and it has not been maintained, and so we really didn't know what was in there. We got in there, we cleaned it all out, and don't you know, what's coming up has just been wonderful. So we've added some plants to that, and we've redefined some of the area, and just it's coming along really, really good. I got one day I was out there, and there was a lady standing in the garden in this weed patch that was the garden before I got a hold of it. And I went up to her and I said, thank you for showing interest in the garden. I'm a park attendant, this is one of my areas of interest. And she said, I planted it. Well, it blew my mind. Her name was Barbara Yinger, and she was one of the members of the National Garden Society that was instrumental in planting and designing that garden. So we've stayed in touch with her. And I said, do you have any, can you tell me what it looked like in the beginning? And she said, I can't, I don't remember, I've moved, and those records are just lost. Well, I got an email from her last night, and she said, wonder of wonders, I found my notes from 2004 about that garden. Would you like to have them? Well, what do you think I said? I said, absolutely. So she's mailing those to me now. And every time I go out there, there's something that's really, somebody's coming through. Today, I went out there just to check on things and see how things were going to see how our garden is growing. 1 week ago today, Deborah planted a box of wildflower seeds. Do you know they're up? They're up. 1 week. Anyhow, so while I was out there today, a gentleman in a white car pulled in right behind me, and I just going on down to the garden. And I look around, and he's standing right behind me. And I said, "You interested in the garden?" He said, "I'm Rob Hedelt from the Freelance Star." He was out there to do a story. He said, "I was hoping I'd find somebody I could talk to." Well, talking is not a problem for me. So things are happening. I mean, it's a good time to get involved out there. It's really, really getting excited. Now, the town, several of the planning commission people have said, let us know what we can do for you. So I've got some ideas. There's one in particular that you can do that won't cost you anything but a few strokes of a pen. I think it would be a wonderful idea for you to add Monroe Hall to the trolley tours. If you bring people out there that have never been there before, just on the routine trip that the trolley does through town, they'll see it, and maybe they'll come back on their own. So if you could do that, that one thing would help us a great deal to get larger exposure for our people to come and see. Another thing that I have asked about, and is I want a golf cart out there. I want to be able to monitor the trails more efficiently. I want to be able to give access to the trails to people who might have a hard time walking. If you see that perimeter trail, you'll see it's just over a half a mile. And that's a pretty good walk. But if you have trouble with your legs, and it does get hot out there in the summer, having somebody that you can just, put them on a golf cart and ride them around and let them see, it would help. So I'm looking for somebody to donate a golf cart or to lend one. Perhaps one of the golf cart dealers would be willing to lend one to put out there for those weekends when they can. So that's one thing that I want. And now back to your map. If you would look at that, please. Right at the very top of your map, you should see a little tiny red arrow. You find the arrow? Little tiny red arrow right at the very top. Well, if you will notice, that kind of goes right along beside the highway. I bet you can guess what I'm going to ask you. Oh, yeah. Well, that says that's future. All right, that's future. That's future for us as the Monroe Foundation. But if you could put it on your do list for future, perhaps there can be a way to extend that trail up to the back entrance to Monroe Point, which is that housing development that's just across the road from the Food Lion. That's called Monroe Point. If we could give golf cart access that far by a navigable trail, that would also help to get a lot of people out there just for a day in the park. It would be wonderful. The other stuff that's on the back of the map that I gave you is just some conceptions, artist conceptions. I got that from the, I brought the wrong book. I got that from an archaeological study journal, and that goes back to 1950 and 1953. You can read the dates on those. So this isn't something that's just been, popped up like a mushroom overnight. This has been worked on for a very, very long time. It's time for us to get involved. We have a presidential birthplace right on our doorstep. And it's pretty much ignored. But it's time to get involved with that, because our distinction between Monroe and Washington is that George Washington was born at Wakefield in Westmoreland County. And we're all very, very proud of him. But James Monroe was born here. He grew up here. He was educated here in Westmoreland County. He's one of our sons, and he was there before Colonial Beach was. He was. And so what we're going to try to replicate in the house is the home that he grew up in. So we're going actually back to pre-Revolutionary War. When we are in the house as docents, we will be in period costume. And that's going to be a lot of fun. But when otherwise, you know, we're going to be park attendants, we'll wear our badges and regular clothes, and we will be greeting the people and telling them as much as we can tell them. But once we're in the house and the house is open, we will be in period costume. And that's really everything that I wanted to tell you. I'm ready for questions. Mr. Buswell can answer more questions than I can.
Thank you so much. You've been a great help to us.
Thank you.
Does any member of the commission have a question?
This is really exciting. I've been sort of waiting with bated breath to hear about the progress of the I think it would be a great thing for Colonial Beach to bring in tourists, and I applaud your efforts. And the only question I really have is, so what is the estimated date of completion or time frame?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
The estimated date of completion or time frame?
On the rack cards, which I'm going to give you, we had anticipated to be open this past April.
Yeah.
But the weather does not read our plan, so we're going to be ready next April is our plan, April 2019. Now, on the 28th day of April is James Monroe's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
In Richmond, where James Monroe is buried at Hollywood Cemetery, the state has just spent $900,000 to rehab the bird cage. If you've ever been there, it's a metal structure, and that is surrounding his burial area. We always have to move ours because that's the presidential wreath laying from the President of the United States. And that's always closest to the 28th. So we get pushed around. That's why we had it on the 21st. And next year, it'll be on the 20th. So that the Army can do its stick with the band and all that stuff that they do down there. Very impressive, it is. I'd like to thank Colonial Beach because early on, in fact, I think it was in the funny days when I was here as the town manager, we applied for an ICE-T grant, which is Department of Transportation money. We received it, $250,000 was to do some work on the pier and to create a walking trail to the James Monroe birthplace. Well, that didn't happen for various reasons. And subsequent to that, we authorized the transfer of that $250,000 to the county, because the county had received another grant of $500,000. And that is what built the visitor center, part of that. And that is what is doing the landscaping out there right now, is that grant started 10 years ago. But that's lightning speed. Because
Unfortunately, you're right.
this whole project started the year I was born, 1933. And it's taken that long to get the hole in the ground and the house coming out of it. So we've got that done.
Can I just ask you when the house will be finished? Is that,
Next year.
Next year.
so there won't be anything more open this year, but,
Well, the visitor center is always open during
yeah.
the summer,
okay.
but the house is hollow. We do have some furniture from the family and the heirs in storage in Fredericksburg that will be brought over and used to populate the house. Talking about heirs, on Saturday morning, we're having a group of James Monroe heirs visit the site. Actually, one of them lives in Kilmarnock. So Monroe Gatchell is his name, and he's coming with other friends and cousins and things like that to visit the site and see it for the first time. So there are heirs out there, and guess what we're going to do when we see him? We're going to say, here's our tin cup. Put some money in it.
I'll be there to do that.
Anyway,
The park is always open. It's always open for walkers, for people to come, people walk their dogs out there. The park is always open. It's only the visitor center that is open, in the, you know, the 3 months. Otherwise, you're welcome to come to the park anytime.
Any other questions?
I was just gonna say, I'd be happy to, post something on our Facebook page.
By all means.
And on Nextdoor for you to, just as
Wonderful.
we'd love to do that, and we will do that for sure next spring when there's something there for people to see the house. But again, as Bucky has said, you can go out there and walk around. I walked from the house down to the creek. There is a pier at the creek. Not much of a pier, but it was built by the scouts about. That's Monroe Creek. Anyway, not much of a creek, but not much of a pier to go with the creek. Anyway, it's a nice walk. The concrete pavement is there, and some of the markers describing what was going on in President Monroe's life are also in place. So it's a historical walk, and we recommend it to you. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any others? Yes, Bob?
I just want to say it's remarkable. I thank you for all your efforts. It's going to be wonderful for this area, so thank you so much.
It is, and may I point out that it will be the only authentic birthhouse of a president of the United States. It's
I'm
built
curious
on the,
how you got those drawings and how you make it authentic. I know it was a real problem with Washington's birthplace, so
yeah.
how in the
Well,
world did you get those plans?
you will see when I give you this rack card. This is the brand new, I picked it up yesterday. The rack card, the house. Now the house and the foundation, which has been found, give us the dimensions of the house. And as Bucky said, this is a farmhouse. The carpenter lived there. Spence Monroe was a carpenter, and it's not palatial by any stretch of the imagination. But it is a nice size house. I think it's 56 feet by 28 feet or something like that.
2 stories.
Yeah, and a loft, and 2 chimneys. The whole farm is, is our goal eventually, to do that with the outbuildings. And yes, Mrs. Monroe did have a still. And people would ride down the road and stop by for a little bit of a toddy and press on down to Montrose or someplace else. But she did have a still. Now, whether we're gonna have a still, I don't know. But there's a winery going in on the road into the Moose Lodge, and they're doing wine and apple cider. So,
Okay. Robin?
I first want to thank you for your presentation, and it's always good to hear about updates because we see that some progress, but it's better to have all the information. As far as your request to us, on the trolley tours, adding you to the trolley tours, I think is an excellent idea. That really has to do with Bay Aging and the tourism board. And so I'm hoping that our town manager will forward that request on to the appropriate people there.
Yes, I have nudged down for it. They've already got their schedule for this year, but it sounds like you're not ready for that, so it's good that they have 12 months to plan.
yeah. I didn't push it for this year because we're not ready. The house is open, so we don't want to have a lot of people accessing the house under construction because of hazards. But bear in mind, next year, you will get a request to amend the route. The folks at that end of town, Jimmy, we need to have it over here.
Well, I think it's in line with our comprehensive plan. There are multiple places in our plan in which talk about transportation, and in chapter 4 on page 10 is a bikeways and trails plan, and you're on it,
Oh.
and it's in blue, and it goes from Colonial Beach right down there to Monroe's birthplace.
All right.
So you're in the long-term plan, and so that gives us a lot of backing to try to help, with
Thank
this.
you.
So I think that, obviously, like you said, this is a project that's been in the works for a very long time, and so people have been trying to do this before me, before you, and, we'll try to be good stewards to continue that progress. I think, creating some sort of access from Colonial Beach to the trolley is an excellent idea, but this is a bike path or a walkable trail path. I don't know if it's really possible to make it a golf cart path, which would really be, excellent. But, that is in the comp plan, and it could be something that can be added to our priorities in our next year's CIP to look for grant money or some, VDOT, monies like you did before. And so thank you for bringing it up, and that now we know next year this could be something we should be looking forward to and trying to push a little bit harder on.
Very good. When I was familiar with the iced tea program, the golf carts would have qualified as a transportation source, which they love to have different methods of transport, bicycle, walking, golf carts. That,
Yes, I believe it still does. Yep. There's money there for that, and the VDOT cycle is every 2 years, and so it's good to know this now, because like you said, everything takes a lot longer than you think. So if we prioritize this now, it could be in a cycle, but it's a biannual cycle, so, now's the time to get started, and, don't expect results immediately, but I'd like to see it here, and I'd like to see, the progress happening there, and, making those things happen together seems to be the right idea.
Thank you.
and we thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you and talk about our cause celebrate, and that is the James Monroe Birthplace House and Visitor Center. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for bringing it to our attention. I would like to mention that it might be worth your while to talk to Jim Bell, who is here for the Downtown Colonial Beach organization.
Okay.
They have a committee on historic preservation, and they might be able to assist you even more, and as they move forward with us.
Thank you.
So that might be a big help. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to public comment on planning commission matters that are not on the agenda. Does any member of the audience have any comments or recommendations to make? Come.
Good evening, Commission. How are you?
Good.
So this morning I dropped a letter over at the town hall expressing some of my concerns for the revitalization of the local parks and playgrounds. By the way, my name is Sierra Pierce. I'm born and raised, so I'm very familiar with the town. I just have a short letter I'd like for everyone to be aware. I'm sure there's other parents as well who have some of the same concerns. Recently, as I was doing the traditional ride around the point, I noticed that the playgrounds needed some serious sprucing up. I am writing as a concerned resident of the town and as a parent. I propose the commission to approve a budget to revitalize the playground across from Nancy's Ice Cream, the park on the point, and at Robbins Grove. As suggestions, the playground across from Nancy's could really use all new mulch and a really good power washing. The holes under the swings also need filling. The park at the point could use a new fence, mulch, and a good washing as well. The swing area there also has holes. Robbins Grove has so much potential and appears many people overlook the quaint park. It could really use a new parking area. I propose to make the trail that outlines the park a true walking trail, either with asphalt or dirt. It would be nice to see more seating throughout all parks and playgrounds, perhaps even light poles for those that enjoy the areas at dusk. I suggest signs asking those walking dogs to please pick up behind their pets. Attached is also a photo of a handicap ramp that would be beneficial to those in need at the beaches. At least one ramp would surely make those in wheelchairs happy to be able to enjoy the beach just a little bit more. It would come with great pleasure to see changes and cleanup made quickly as the weather is shifting to warmer days. I strongly believe the above proposals would benefit many of the residents and their children. These small ideas would make a huge difference to those utilizing the playgrounds and the parks. I am hoping the commission will consider my suggestions and move forward with action. I am available for any questions or comments or responses with my telephone number listed below on the letter. And for those in the audience, I'm just going to show them the handicap ramp that I'm proposing. Goes down. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Absolutely.
It helps us a lot to hear from people like yourself, because we need your support as well as your help. And that's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
So we will attend to this and put it on our agenda.
And even asking for volunteers from the community to assist with the mulching or the cleaning or anything. I'm sure there's some parents who would not mind volunteering, myself being one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will make note of that.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Hi, my name is Bob Ford, and I live on Stratford Circle in Riverside Meadows. We've got a big problem on Stratford Circle. If I may, I took a few pictures last night. And that's just a small part of it. And those potholes aren't new, they're months old. Occasionally they come and throw a shovel full of gravel in them. And as you know, that doesn't work. A couple of cars run over it again and the gravel's gone. But the potholes aren't the biggest problem there. The biggest problem is the dust. I was so excited last year when I saw them come down Stratford Street, but they paving it, but they stopped at the intersection before coming into Stratford Circle. Now we're getting more and more kids that live in there, little kids, infants. They play on both sides of the road, and that dust. Somebody told me a couple of weeks ago that that dust contains toxins. And so before coming here, I went online and looked up toxins in road gravel, and it seems it's quite a problem. It causes mesothelioma, which I'm sure everybody here has heard of. You see it advertised on TV all the time by these law firms, the tort law firms. We have more and more traffic. We have the school buses coming through 6 different routes. Now on a dry day, when the buses come down there, I happen to live on the far corner at the end of the straightaway. The buses come down there, and the dust is so heavy, it's like looking at that wall. You cannot see beyond the bus. We also have a commercial business that's back in the corner. It's a landscaping business. Why they're still operating in a residential neighborhood, I have no idea. I know everybody's aware of it, but but they have multiple pieces of large lawn equipment, heavy duty equipment from little load lifters, cats, multiple trailers, I'd say at least 6. They have employees parking in the corner. In the mornings they block the road with the trailers, and in the afternoons they block the road with the trailers. That doesn't affect me, but it does affect neighbors beyond me. Now, this toxin that is in the road gravel is something that is called ironite. It's like ironite, except with instead of the I, it's an E, ironite. And if you go online, you'll be able to see, different cases where people that live on each side of, where, they have gravel roads predominantly, there's large breakouts of mesothelioma. We have not only the children there, we have 2 pregnant ladies now. Everybody there breathes this dust. And as you all well know, if it can happen, it will happen. And then who's gonna be responsible? I heard, yesterday also that you all have been repaving roads. When we never had our road paved in the first place. I would think that your first priority would be to pave the roads that aren't paved before you start repaving them.
We definitely have a plan for that, and we have 2/3 of the Meadows area already completed, and we have 1/3 of the roads in that area that need to be completed. So we are in the process of looking at that and making it happen. In fact, it's in the capital improvement plan.
That would be simply wonderful. It's also a safety hazard, and now with the good weather coming on, all the go-karts, battery powered and gas powered, and some of them are really fast. They come around there, they seem to think that because it's round, it's a racetrack. And we put up signs out there. The homeowners shouldn't have to put up the signs to
Just to respond, we don't normally respond to public comment, but just to clarify for your concern, I think that, I know that Stratford Circle is on the list to be paved, but that the reason that it's been put off is because of some of the stormwater management issues in that particular region. So it is in the plan, and it is part of that last 1/3, and,
is it planned for this year or?
We
as
believe
far
that
as
it will be.
funding goes,
I'm sorry?
Quinn,
I'll try to speak to it best as we can. A lot of roads, and the reason why, and this is a great opportunity for me to talk about the roads in general, because I think we've all experienced the potholes and quite frankly are sick of them. And I've had to do a lot of research myself since I took over as town manager. One of the problems that we've had, and I didn't know this until I had to find out, is that we live in a 4-season area geographically, and due to the freeze and to the thaw, it creates a huge problem with holes coming up. Now, to compound it even further, most of these roads were made in the 70s. So the fill under the asphalt is 1970s level technology. So when I go in with 2018 technology and I fill those holes, just imagine I have now a very solid area, which is next to another 1970s salt area. So it creates this ripple effect. And another thing that I'd like to share with you, and just for the good of the order really, is that our funding for roads across Colonial Beach comes from 2 different colors of money. One color of money is what we're able to raise as a town, which is very small. As everybody's seen the budget, we quite frankly don't have a lot of income coming in. And the other part's supposed to be VDOT funding. So when we go into an area, VDOT often plays a significant role in what we can do and how we can do it. Back to Mrs. Cobb's greater point is it is on the schedule to do. I think I lost my mic. No, back. It's on the schedule to do. I've written down all your concerns about Stratford Circle. I think it's significant. And I share your concerns with the health hazard. I've lived in multiple communities across the U.S., especially in the Midwest, where I'm just going to speak like this because I know my voice carries it. I've been out in the Midwest, and maybe for short-term approaches, we can find a way to spray when it gets dusty. It's a Band-Aid. It's kind of performing triage. It's not fixing anything.
Right.
And I'm going to go back and speak publicly about what we can do. But I've definitely got everything written down, and I'm also going to talk to the police about golf carts using this racetrack, especially because you have young children there. So to me, that's like my hairs on end when I hear that.
Yeah.
Standing up.
And 2 on the way, so, it's growing.
And also hear your concern about the commercial business. I have that written down, and we're going to do some investigations on that to find out in greater detail what the dynamics are, because not everything's always that clear. But looking proofs in the pudding, you brought it, and if you don't mind, I'd like to keep these
Sure,
take it back to
welcome.
my public works department, to show them, I know they've worked feverishly over the winter to fill these holes, and I can also appreciate the fact once a 2-ton truck drives over it, your hole's back.
Yeah.
And the best that I can do is go back and make this a priority effort. I wish I could give you an idea when we can pave it. I don't have one for you today. If you wanna get with me after the meeting, I'll get your contact number. You can stay in contact.
That'd be great. And, I would ask for you to make Stratford Circle a priority, not because I live on it, but because of the way it is. And I've driven over all of those roads over there, and most of them aren't bad, even though they're gravel. But when you have those people streaming around there and the dust is flying, it's really horrible.
And to Ms. Schick's point too, there has been an issue with that specific geography with the water. And we're in the wet season right now. And we really don't anticipate getting on the wet season until May to June. And I think we've all experienced, as soon as that turns off, it goes dry. But we've had a lot of issues. I think Santa Maria has been a hot spot for it. But the Meadows as a whole, and there's some history as to why that is. But a lot of the public works effort before we get to the roads, ironically, we've got to take care of what's under the roads and what supports those roads. So it's almost like you turn over the water front problem, you turn over that, there's another one. But certainly want to address the best way we can.
One other point I wanted to make about it is the property values. I've been a licensed realtor for over 40 years, director of commercial real estate for the largest firm in the country. And there's a lady that lives catty corner to me that's had her property, very, very nice house, one of the nicest houses in there. It's been on the market for about a year. It should have sold in 2 weeks. And would you want to buy a house on that road?
No, I completely understand that. I can see how that, and for selfish reasons, I want your properties to sell and they're fully valued because that's how we receive tax dollars. So I can find for the project. So I'm certainly on your side with that. And that's a positive argument to support it. And I think that's valuable information. I'll take that back.
Thank you very much.
Sir, your name was Bob Ford. Did I get that right? Okay, thank you.
I close public hearing. I would like the commissioners to look at the goals and objectives for this year. We are late in doing this, and I apologize for all of that. We've had some confusion over this, but if you will look at this, we've separated at the top of the goals. You see that these are consistent goals of our commission, but each year there are some others that we'd like to put in. So at the top you'll find the specific goals for 2018 and the consistent ones at the bottom this year. Is there a move to accept these as written or discussion?
Well, I'll move so that we can discuss.
Thank you. Second? Second. Eric?
Well, I thought there was going to be 2017 first. We decide not to go over that. That's on the agenda.
I think that's
That's a,
I think
Oh, that's a typo.
that's a typo. It should be
Okay.
2017 to 2018.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Some of these look new to me. Are these ones that we've already talked about?
We had talked about them at the first meeting that we.
January maybe?
Yes,
January.
January. And we haven't been back to them since, but, is there a question on one of them?
Well, for example, the survey, design a survey for all taxpayers to deal with their water bills and so forth. I guess I'm not clear how that's going to happen or who's going to do that.
We need to look at that as a condition and see what we need to have done so that we can get some of the land use done, chapter, and also our chapter 3, the goals and objectives that go with land use.
Okay, so this was specifically going to be related to land use?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I'm looking forward to identifying funding sources, just this preventing.
Yes, that is one of our goals, and I hope if there's anyone in the audience who would like to help us with that, please let us know. The town, as you know, with their fiscal reports and the last couple of meetings, we must assist in finding the income for many of the capital improvement projects. And if you would like to help us, please give us your name after the meeting, and we would be very happy to have you help us. Thank you. Any other discussion?
I guess I do have a question about filling the slots that we have.
Yes, we do have 2 applications that are coming
Okay.
and will be presented at the next meeting, hopefully.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Do I have somebody to move?
I move that we approve the goals.
Well, actually, I already moved.
Oh, I thought we moved for, we're voting now.
Yes, we
Yes.
moved for this. Yeah.
Move to vote.
So,
Eric?
I guess I'll call for a vote. I support these.
Pam?
Aye.
Bob? Now I'd like you to look at the bylaws. I hope. There was very little that changed from previous years, from the last year. Last year we did a complete overhaul of the bylaws. The only addition is the advocate liaison shall report to the chairperson, coordinate efforts with staff to advocate for the development and implementation of the commission recommendations. And that refers to the 6 items or ordinances that the commission has passed and have not appeared on the town council agenda yet. And present and facilitate discussion on action items to the town council at regular meetings. That is an addition to our bylaws. Do we have
I'll move that we accept these.
I second.
Eric,
Aye.
Aye.
Bob,
I mean, I don't understand how, if it's in your house versus appointed.
Maureen,
I appoint them.
It says that at the,
Where does that say?
in, these positions are, it's elected by the commission at its annual organization meeting in January. Number 5A. 5, section 5. Yeah. Roman numeral 5.
I assure you, Bob, that last year we went through this for hours.
Yeah. I'd also like to, this is not really to not pass the bylaws, but Pam's term is up for renewal, and so, we should, let town council, know that, so that. I have you as, April 30th of 2018. No, it's a 4-year term.
4-year term,
So maybe it's a typo, it's supposed to be 2019. That's from the planning
Yes.
office.
2019.
Okay,
Yes, I have the 2019 on my list.
okay, that's
So,
fine. I
yes.
just, I try to get ahead of things so instead of being behind things.
No, that's,
Okay,
I definitely have 2019 on the
Okay.
Pam's appointments,
that's
so
fine.
that's fine.
I'll be happy.
Well, I just want to point out that there's another change. So,
Yes,
on page, 2, item 4, meetings.
Yes.
I'm curious why it was changed the first Thursday and then the meeting on the fourth. First sentence of, 4A.
That's when
no,
the
that should be the
council-
last Thursday.
Should be the last.
It should be the last Thursday of the month, because that works out in December and November when we have holidays. And it's usually the 3rd or 4th, and last year we got caught with that. So we are making it the last Thursday of the month.
Okay. And I was a little confused last month because we were on the fourth.
Because the bylaws hadn't been printed yet and approved.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I amend my motion to say that these are approved the way they've been amended?
Yes. Second? Bob, how do you vote? Robin?
I,
Eric? Thank you so much. Thank God approval today. Committee reports, Pam?
Well, I had sent out a report that on Monday, on the agenda, and I apologize for those of you who might be here. I think Rob Murphy, who was unable to make it this evening, we will be rescheduling him. I've met with him on several occasions, and he was hoping to come forward. One of the things we definitely had on our agenda was the VDOT 6-year plan, and which plays right into the role, the things that Bob was talking about, and where we're going the next 6 years for road, streets improvement in Colonial Beach.
And we do have that, Bob did request that 2 of us meet with him at a future time, Rob, so that we could do that, and I am working on scheduling that.
That's all.
Yes,
I did wonder if we might be open to questions other than streets and roads, or maybe we won't focus on that.
Rob is, go ahead, Quinn.
Believe it or not, Rob, I would be able to spend hours with you talking about the VDOT situation. It's probably more than you can absorb in one meeting alone.
So the answer is, we're only talking about,
Well, yeah, VDOT is.
Recommend it.
Yeah, VDOT is one of the most difficult things for us to attend to in this area. By example, the streetscape that's on the capital improvement plan needs to have VDOT's approval before we can move forward. And we're just starting to explore that right now. And VDOT is very difficult to work with. And Rob has a lot of experience in doing that. So he's going to assist us in many of those areas. So there are other topics that he's going to include in his dialogue. CIP, and I'd like to, instead of discussing it as a committee, since I'm still on this committee of capital improvement, I'd like to review the capital improvement with the commissioners, but also with the people sitting there. We did not have an announcement for a public hearing on this, but if any of you have a question or a comment, we'll accept them, but we will in the future have a public hearing on the capital improvement plan. But if you have any questions, we'd be very open to answering your questions now. I think they should be in the packets that were given out. Yes, Jim.
Are these for the 2018, or phase 1,
Part 2.
or part 2 on?
Part two is for the future ones, yes. As you know, capital improvement projects are not being funded for this year's budget, but we are going toward the 219-220 budget. And the page 2, which is part 2 of this analysis, is the capital improvement plan for 219-220. But we do not want to let the year go by without planning ahead for this purpose. So if you look at page 2, you'll see that that's the future for capital improvements. Any other questions? Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, some of our audience has been here before for our capital improvement discussions, but not all of you have. So just to review it, on the first page at the top, if you have this sheet, it talks about how we select items to go on the plan and what qualifies a program and what doesn't qualify a program. And then in part 1 are things that we are accomplished or are in the process of accomplishing. And we try to keep those as relevant as possible. So we have a list for 2016 and 2015 of things that got accomplished too, but we just left the 2017 or present items on there. And then part 2 is the things that have a high priority or we think can find funding that is not based on sale of property in order to replace our capital improvement fund. So our capital improvement fund in town is acquired by sale of property or other assets that get put into that fund, and right now it's depleted. So we're only looking for funding from other sources like grants or donations or things initiated by private citizens or groups. Anyway, so there's lots of different ways to fund things. So these are things that we're hoping we can accomplish even without that capital improvement fund being, you know, a big fund. And then the things on the last page, and these are all what ifs. This is not the annual budget. This is, we would love to see these things, and let's work forward towards accomplishing any of them that are on any of these pieces of paper. But the last part is things that had been identified as coming from the sale of property, although they can come from other funding sources too. So if we can identify different funding sources, then maybe we can move forward on these too. And then the last part are things that are identified in the comp plan that we know we need, but we really just don't see any way forward right now. So we leave them on there, but in case there becomes an avenue available to make them a higher priority. But for right now, we just want to keep them in mind in case an opportunity comes up. But right now, we don't see an opportunity to make an action. I just wanted to, yeah.
So, so on the future needs of Colonial Beach, I noticed the last one says banners for the Dominion Polo. That's actually going on right now. Why is that on?
Right now, that is going on, but we don't know how it'll be funded.
And this is the working document, so things can change and move on this document. We basically approve one for every year, but every year it's, you know, unfolding and changing, and priorities change and money changes and things like that. So actually the banner program, when we were editing this document, which was back in December, didn't have legs yet as much at that point. So that's kind of one of the things that evolves and things change.
Yes.
I just wanted to know if there was any truth to tourists donating for the recreational basketball courts in town.
Quinn?
Yes, ma'am, I've been in discussion with Fortune probably about once a week. He fully intends to fund basketball courts and tennis courts and possible additional things that would almost be, I don't want to go so boisterous as called a rec center, but multiple courts, maybe with a picnic area. I've already talked to builders and we're moving along with that. You will probably see them at the town council's meetings within the next month. it is moving along.
May I ask if a location has been selected?
There's been multiple locations that have been looked at. We have a good idea of what we anticipate. Some of the discussions have been around the school. Some of the discussions have been around the golf cart plant, but the primary one that's being looked at is the water tower area. Nothing has been decided yet. That's what town council will do through their process. So we're too premature to tell you where the location is. But what he would like to see and what his vision is to have 2 tennis courts, 2 basketball courts, and then hopefully a very small playground. So the younger children can do something while the older children can play on the court.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Susan Walsh, 209 Boundary Street. I have a question about a project that's underway, the boat ramp, which looks great. Is there a site plan available to the public so that residents can take a look at the other improvements associated with the boat ramp? Because I guess there were other site improvements, expansion of the parking lot, things like that. Is there some sort of document available that the public can do?
Well, I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're looking for. So maybe if we talk through this, I can kind of understand exactly. Is there anything specific that you're looking for? I know we're trying to improve the paving. I would like to eventually get it paved one day. We're trying to add more parking spaces, not just for boaters, but also for cars. And we're putting up fence. We're going to reestablish a fence around the playground. And I'm also looking into the option of maybe having a vendor area that will support the playground and the beach and the boat area. I can zone it that way if town council approves, but we'd still have to have a vendor willing to occupy.
So I guess I'm just looking for a site plan that basically shows how the land is being used, where the trees are being removed, or whether the paving is getting added, or.
What's your end state with that?
Pardon?
What's your end state with that plan?
I'm
Your
sorry.
end state. What are you trying to?
Well, I think there have been questions about trees being removed and, you know, the extent of the improvement, whether it's just the boat ramp or whether there's also other improvements part of that project.
Okay, well, I hope I was able to touch on the anticipated things that we're going to be able to do in the next year. We're obviously very stricken by funding, but through additional parking, we believe that we're going to be able to generate enough revenue to make those improvements. I know Public Works is also working under our current ordinances to where if and when that tree gets removed and has been removed, that a replacement plan will be in place so that we adhere to it. And we're probably going to look at, not from an engineering standpoint, so when I hear site plan, I hear engineer, I hear plat, I hear things that are kind of structure, and I don't think that exists for me right now.
Right, I guess there's sort of varying degrees of site plans, but just something that the residents can look at so they know what to anticipate.
I think about 3 weeks ago, I presented a comprehensive parking plan to kind of address the level of parking that we're looking at. The boat ramp exists now, so that kind of gives people visualization too.
That's great.
And you know, if everything works out right, we've already identified the type of fence that we have to use for playground standards, and that should be up as well.
Okay, so is there one document that somebody?
No, you're not going to have one document that you can go through.
Okay.
Jim?
That you brought that up. My first time in this meeting, and I was sent here by 5 of my neighbors. I live on the corner of this exact same question. I asked about 2018. We'll talk about, so does the public program bondage, does that include monies for parking and reconfiguration?
No, it doesn't, and that's the challenge for us. The bondage and stuff was strictly for the boat ramp to make that happen.
So the work is going to the big issue right now is a very popular park bench that's been removed. And the little island there that people walk around the point to sit at. And there's a big construction vehicle there, and neighbors are thinking that's going to get tore up, trees are going to get tore down. And living there, I know if you put a parking lot, you're going to have to crown it, I'm going to get more water in my yard. So these are all issues that I think wonderful. I came here to ask and see if a map offer, but I didn't know if it was right place.
Right. No, I do not possess a map. I do know that the engineers and public works are looking at the drainage because it is the point that's at the very end, and I live on the point as well. I'm about a block or 2 away from it, so I understand exactly what you're saying. In terms of park benches and stuff like that, everything that we're trying to do is supposed to enhance and improve. So while I haven't seen where we're going to replace said park bench, rest assured that the whole idea is that we're going to put more there to support that beach, because I think you live there, you know that the last 2 or 3 years, the influx and just the general activity has exponentially increased down there. So we're really trying to, from an infrastructure standpoint, support that. I know that I think parking was the issue last year pretty bad. And I know that there's been a lot of stuff on social media about the ability for residents to be able to find parking and then the charge of that. And if you have a parking sticker from the town, you can park in a metered space without having to pay for it. That's the genius behind it, to where the town citizens are able to access those things pretty easily. And as far as your water runoff, that again goes into VDOT. Believe it or not, it touches Chesapeake Bay Act as well. And they're pulling all that together to make sure that everything is cohesive as it comes through. Does that help?
Yeah, certainly. Certainly does. I think people want to comment on sit down, but I've been there for 20 years. 20 years ago, we parked more cars there than we park now, because of when we tore down all the poles and things I had in the way in terms of how to park and vehicles, where there was 8 or 9 trucks, now there's 4. So maybe enforcement get more vehicles in there.
And that was a part of the plan that we had to get with the police chief and say, hey, what can we enforce? What can we do? And I agree with you. 20 years ago it was a lot easier, but now we have more regs as time progresses. And we wanted to be able to capture the organization of it. And we do want to make it kind of dress right dress, if you will, to where you have parking lines and to be able to define those things.
I'll sit down and answer this question. So do we have statistics on how many vehicles are there at any given point in time, over the course of the summer, so we know whether we need more parking spots or not? I mean,
Well,
we're talking about both.
No, we don't have any historical, so there was nothing out, when I developed a comprehensive parking plan, there was nothing I could go out and grab. Nobody had done the historical data for me to massage and manipulate. Just general activity levels, and able to check out, do census with the police personnel, because they travel all the time in the public works. People who are out, who see the level of activity, and quite frankly, I see it with my own eyes, because I'm out there.
I think the parking thing, the parking stuff over the last 2 years, we ever do some of that too.
It does. It helps a little bit, but we also know that not everybody paid for that parking, and we didn't enforce it the way we needed to. So the deviation, just the standard deviation of those numbers alone, wouldn't really proffer anything beneficial from an analysis standpoint. But rest assured, we're trying to maximize the amount of parking without taking away any aesthetics, and whatever aesthetics that are altered, we want to eventually get us back to that place.
So and I know what the meaning, but I believe we will quote here, trophy for that. It says, back in 1967, don't always seem to go, but you don't know what you got, so it's gone. The paper actually put up a parking lot.
Yes, I've seems to be a familiar thing in the last 48 hours on social media.
Thank you very much. Are there any other? Thank you so much. We appreciate your help. Don't ever think that we don't appreciate your coming here. I'm overwhelmed when I see you here, and it's wonderful. We need your support, but more importantly, we need your ideas. And that makes this a good commission. So thank you. I'd like to move on to chapter 4 of our comp plan. Up to now, the commission has been studying the comprehensive plan, and we are and chapter 4 is land use development. And because there have been so many questions and concerns about land use, we have localized ourselves there. Plus, good land use produces economic growth. And that's the thing that we're looking at. How do we produce and use our land most effectively and produce economic growth, which is a concern of all, I'm sure, in this speech. Each member of the commission had summarized each of the chapters in the comprehensive plan to point out issues that are completed, issues that have not been touched yet, and also concerns that we have to be concerned about in our future planning. I'd like to share with my commissioners a chart that we received many years ago in a planning course. I tried to simplify it for you, and I do have extra copies if people wish it. One of the main things that we do is follow the vision and goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. And you will notice that when you read the comp plan in the historic section and also in the section on, I believe it's chapter 3, the vision statement tells us about who we are and what we should be. When we look at land use development, we have to look at all facets of the community and how do we implement these. And I think what I've tried to do is bring it all down into simplified terms. The implementation tools for land development is zoning ordinances, which we have really spent the past 2 years on developing updated ordinances for the town. Design guidelines, which another implementation was to make sure that we had standards for our designs. A construction manual, which I have not seen, but I hope that's present. And also capital improvements plan is part of the land use development part. And what we are trying to do over the next couple of months is to figure out, are we using the land effectively, and what types of things should we be doing as a town to create a good future? And those are the things we're talking about. I'd like to ask each commissioner if they have any comments on chapter 4.
I do. I thought I had read through the entire comp plan at some point, but scrutinizing this chapter a little bit closer in this read was kind of interesting, and I don't recall from reading it the first time some of these ideas. For example, the cluster development idea, which is on page 4-3, I think it's a really interesting idea. I don't ever remember anybody ever talking about that during any of the meetings I've ever been to, but I think it's kind of an interesting idea, and it maybe was related to the development that was going to take place across from Wilkerson's.
Yes.
Is that what the idea behind these was to?
Yes, but that, development there has expired. So we actually have, it's in the future, it's in the comp plan as cluster development, but there isn't actually anything, permitted as cluster development as of right now.
Well, I think a couple of things that jumped out at me in this was, first of all, working with the county on jointly developing certain areas, because I'm also not really aware that the county and us plan jointly anything related to zoning. But this is, I mean, I really think this is kind of an interesting idea to work with the county, and if, you know, maybe not on cluster development, but perhaps other things that might create some synergy between the county and the town.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things that sort of jumped out at me. Another one was related to some special zones that we have that I was sort of vaguely aware of, but I feel like it's, most people are probably not aware of it. For example, the enterprise zone, as I understand it, we actually are part of an enterprise zone. Is that correct?
I believe that still exists, doesn't it, Quinn?
I would have to go back and look. I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
I can verify that. The hub zone we're no longer a part of. The enterprise zone we are a part of, and we have 2 applicants in town that are receiving money this year in that zone.
Oh, really?
However, that zone expires in 2020. permanently, unless the Virginia legislation continues to fund it. So right now, I know the Northern Neck is petitioning their, elected officials to try to continue to extend the enterprise zone funding, but that is a statewide program that has slowly diminished in, money over time, and we are sort of the last leg of it, and right now it's set to expire in 2020. So that entire section of enterprise zone, and which includes the hub zone,
Right, that was the other.
area. Right now, we are in the enterprise zone. The hub zone no longer exists for us, but the enterprise zone will expire in 2020. I will say though, if you go into our town code, that we have other commercial incentives. And so, that was part of creating this enterprise zone in town, this overlay with these commercial incentives. One of which being that you don't have to pay certain taxes for businesses, certain types of businesses that promote, tourism, such as, eco-tourism related businesses, restaurants even, I think, hotels, things like that for your first couple of years in town, in order to promote, new startups. And there's a couple other incentives in our town code, so it's sort of relevant, but won't be as relevant on a state level.
Well, it sounds like, those incentives that you described, those are not going to disappear because of this disappearing. So that's good, material for the chamber or somebody to have open meetings, community meetings about business people here.
Yeah, we probably should have included that in our public pamphlet we put in together. We didn't, that's not included somewhere. As a resource for new businesses.
If you go to Muni Code, you can find the verbiage there. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a couple different incentives, and they talk about this enterprise zone or the commercial zone and commercial incentives. And Kathy Flanagan is a wealth of resources on this stuff,
Yeah.
more so than the online resources that we have. So,
Okay.
to be comprehensive, I really go to Kathy.
Okay. Those were the things that jumped out at me when I first.
It's very good. I'm just curious about clarification on the historic zone and where we might stand with that initial survey that was done, and where we are and waiting on that. Are you familiar with that plan?
I shouldn't really speak to that right now, but I think at your next meeting, we're gonna have somebody who can address that. I know we have the historic zone and then the commercial area, but right now our Ms. Jesus resides, and I think she's pretty much a subject matter expert, and that's really the answer that you're looking for.
Okay. Now, I was just curious because I had been reading parts of that in preparation for grants and grant applications, and there's a lot of information in that survey and document, but I wasn't certain where it landed and what we're waiting to hear from it.
Do we have an outline, Quinn, of those areas that are historic
No, I'm sure we do in her office
from the grant?
that I can't go out and touch right now.
Yeah, so the initial survey, and that's why the recommendation was put in the CIP to find a grant for the future historic study so that we could get designated. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I also know, it bothers me, I can't remember her name now, the tourism and the historic society has some information on that as well. I met with Ms. Coherty, I know I mispronounced her name wrong, Coherty, is it? From the History Museum, and she was looking at things as well. But in terms of the map and zoning and stuff like that, I don't have that really available.
My understanding, we had a study done by a firm called Dovetail, maybe?
Yes.
But that was focused specifically in the district, which is light blue kind of on the future land use map, which is that historic commercial, that RC, resort commercial, historic commercial district. However, the grant really identified that we needed to include the entire point, not
Yes.
just this one little area.
It
That's-
went all the way
yeah.
down the point, and
Yes.
because so many, the historical
Right.
landmarks that they were looking at were not what we necessarily thought of. We were
Yeah.
surprised, it was a lot of the ordinance.
Yeah, and that they also missed things like the breakers, which is
Yeah.
obviously, should have been, studied. So a new study has to be done, with my understanding is that it was expensive, something we would be looking for a grant for.
And I believe the top money for that was put in for 50,000 is the initial grant for that.
To do the little study that happened already.
No,
Yeah.
but for future one, it's to do the thorough study was 50,000.
I would be surprised if that.
Okay, so maybe it is more. All right, we'll check that out. Any other comments or questions?
Well, I can speak a little bit to, what, Terry might be interested in as far as, incentive to people moving in here into the historic buildings. Because the downtown Colonial Beach has a committee called the, Design Committee, thank you. And, my son did a study about what all the Virginia state, how you can apply for, to get these and has to be done before you start building, so, or refurbishing. And so, that might also be something that might want to be put in that brochure. But there has been some research, I think by the Historic Society, by the Beach Association, probably some, some other towns, so maybe those parties should all get together and share information.
And I had a report on that, by the way.
Yes, we do.
But pamphlet, maybe not to hold this one up, but to expand.
Mhm.
Are you asking for comments on chapter 4?
Yes,
Okay. I just, I had some comments about the cluster. Being new, can someone help me out? I assume that there's going to be any cluster area, there's no zoning for it, or is there a zoning?
You would apply for a cup in order to receive cluster development.
So we need by permit.
Right.
Okay. I like the cluster idea too. In fact, I like the idea of more, dense housing. I'm curious, because I've looked at the, we do have a zone for, I think it's called, R2A, and I don't think we've used it at all. The R2A allows duplexes. We do have duplexes, but there must be somehow specially allowed, or maybe the grandfather, I don't know how that works. But the point is, we are a town who wants to, our main goal should be to attract tourism. And tourism requires businesses that generally have lower salaries. We need to have more housing, I believe, more affordable housing. And I don't want.
I think that is the chapter on the housing section that we have to discuss that. Housing was the chapter, is that correct?
We've been on that merry-go-round for a while.
Was
That chapter,
The housing chapter.
the housing chapter has a lot of that information in it. And,
The new chapter.
the new chapter that was added to the comprehensive plan, which should be an insert in your plan.
Maybe it's part of the chapter, but I only have
No,
5
it's
chapters.
just, we just passed it, 6 months ago, and it was an amendment to the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And we'll make sure you get a copy. So
Well,
that,
it'd be
that's
nice if
all
you
of
get on
those
the website,
answers.
but
That'll
Don't
answer.
mention that.
Okay. All right. I wanted to ask.
That's where I got my, that's where I got my
Okay.
comprehensive plan from.
It should be on the website.
Okay, okay,
It's,
all right,
it's
We'll get
part
there.
6 of chapter 1.
all right, then I will cease talking about that. I have one other
Oh, we have another question.
question. In the introduction, one of the sentences says that it's important to note that the map, talking about the future land use plan map, only addresses broad density land use objectives, not detailed standards. And then part 6 of this chapter, this talks about
Page 412.
talks about, yes, page 412, exactly. Illustrative concept plans. And I know because I've been looking through the entire, well, I guess almost the entire comprehensive plan, that there is mention of, design guidelines and concept plans, basically in several of the chapters. And I wonder if it would be more powerful, and I'm not sure that this is the right chapter, or maybe it is, to expand in much more. These 2 pages are very gentle.
The document that expands on that is called the Business District Revitalization Plan, and it's about 80 pages long. So you need to, that does what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, about that.
No,
Okay.
is in here on the web, I do know this is there.
Okay.
The revitalization program is on there.
It's called the
And this
Business District
concept-
Revitalization Plan.
This concept plans,
Business concept.
it's all in that.
I read that.
It is document.
Yes,
That one,
that one.
that one. Have you seen that page before?
And it has the design guidelines. It includes design guidelines.
Maybe you're only talking about what?
Actually, I think it's on the web, but I.
It's on the web.
And I have an electronic version of it.
Well, if it's on the web, it's electronic, so
I can make sure.
I'll get it and smart up.
It seems to me that many of the comments people asked have, are still in existence today. Is that not true? I mean, except for the concept that Eric talked about, the cluster.
I don't know what that means.
I just wondered, as you look at this chapter, are we still living by this and needing all of this? I mean, you look at the future land map, we do have to change that. Because this is not the updated one. Is that correct?
Correct.
If you're asking, Maureen, if these are still things that we should strive for, I would say yes. If you're asking whether we do these things, I would say in large part, no.
Okay. How do we implement?
Well, like, for example, the bikeways and trail plan, it seems like such a great idea and could play into our promotion of Monroe birthplace. I mean, you know, in Alexandria, where I lived for 20 plus years working here, I mean, bike paths were everywhere. It was such a, great way to kind of explore the town. And here it just feels like, it's a great place to bike because it's flat, but there's really no designated pathways to travel on that will get you to fun things to do and see. So, I mean, that's one that I think could really be improved. But I mean, there's other things in here that I felt like we were not really doing. Although the one thing that we are doing, that I did definitely take note of, was the downtown Colonial Beach is one of the action items that came out of this. The Virginia Main Street designation, the affiliate, so forth. I mean, that is what downtown Colonial Beach is. So I felt like, there have been some efforts, but we're still, far behind. Yeah.
Well,
That was one of the reasons I mentioned that those 2 pages on the concept plan. I mean, it's almost like wishful thinking. It didn't sound like it was saying, yeah, this we gotta do.
Well, I think what happened was, as a result of this part of the plan, they did, they did hire the land studios to do a description of how to implement that in the revitalization plan. So it is all in that plan. So they took the concept here and they really fleshed it out. Now, we didn't get funded for all of it, but a majority of it we did get funded for by our grants.
We're talking about chapter 4, so my point was, do we leave that part 6 in, or do we refer to this revitalization plan? What's
No, I think that's a good point. I think there should be a specific line that says, for more information on this, refer to business district revitalization plan, because otherwise you see this and you don't know where the rest of the details are. So that's a great addition. And I think, you know, this was the chapter that I reviewed when we did our summary reviews. So I think overall, you know, a lot of the things you can stay with, you're exactly right, edits like that update the information to our current, you know, the things that have happened since then, like the business district revitalization plan, like the fact that we've lost the hub zone. I mean, that needs to be deleted. I think it's misleading to people who think that that's in here. Was misleading to me just a few months ago. And so, and then on, you know, the bikeways trail, you know, maybe things on that can be updated based on, you know, the knowledge of what VDOT funds can happen. I mean, I think that should stay in because you just never know when you might get opportunities. And it may help with, who knows, the Corey Smith thing.
Sure, or turning the point into a one-way.
Or the, right, that concept plan, there's, you know, but, so most of it should stay, but edits like that, like, you know, referring to other documents, and those would be more.
That's a great idea, and I think we'll make note of that in the minutes so that we can we can do that. One other thing, you had a petition to share with us, Robin, about the Chesapeake Bay Act.
Are we doing chapter 4?
Yes.
Yeah, I just, this is a brochure, and I'm sorry I didn't bring one for, everybody in the audience, but this is the public brochure that goes out to, it's in the county, boarding and building and zoning office. And so this is Westmoreland County's regulations, not the town of Colonial Beach. However, I think it's a good outline of the Chesapeake Bay policy and the guidelines of the Bay policy. Now, you'll see I've redlined it because in Colonial Beach, we have different regulations than the county. We decided to take this in a different direction. And the county has changed their rules a couple times also, so careful when you go out there. But our rule, our basic rule is 36% coverage. You can't cover more than 36% of a lot without mitigation. So that's the first rule everybody should be aware of. And that anything that has already been built in the past that's over the 36% is grandfathered in, but only that shape and that exact size. You cannot expand it or change the shape into a different shape because it still is, you know, over. Lots that are before the Bay Act can get administrative approval instead of planning commission approval because they obviously were allotted before these regulations were in place. So there's some leeway with that. And that we do require a site plan for every type of coverage in the town of Colonial Beach. The county only requires it if it's more than 16%, but in the town, because our lots are so small and it's so probable to reach the 36% coverage ratio, we have to be much more careful about it. So we do have to submit a site plan with every addition or building permit that adds additional coverage. Now, there are a couple gray areas, like you can turn, gravel is 100% impervious, even though it's not really 100% impervious. So if you have gravel, you can asphalt it, and it's the same as asphalt, there's no difference there, you don't need a permit to asphalt gravel. You don't need a permit for some back fencing, things like that. So there are some things you don't need a site plan for, but for the most part, if you're doing construction, you need a site plan in the town, and that's not the way that they enforce this code. And, like I said, these are the county, this is the county's brochure, so I would be a little bit hesitant to tell you that it's the law of the land here, because we are different. We do treat it differently than the county does. But, you asked me about receiving some information, and I could honestly talk about the Chesapeake Bay Act for way longer than anybody wants to sit in the audience. So, that's just the quick nitty gritty of it. And, you know, if we want to get more into that at some point or have a learning session on it, then we can do that. But, and it maybe would be very helpful if the town had our own brochure with our real rules in it, since they are different from the county in some significant ways. There's the same concept, the same principle, the same idea of conservation and trying to control stormwater management, which is what the Bay Act is all about. They reference, you know, the native plantings and things like that. They both have the same, you know, basic principles, but the way in which you get to enforce them from each code enforcer is different. So King George enforces it differently than we do, and Westmoreland enforces it differently, and so on and so forth. But we're all in the Bay Act. Everybody in town, everybody in Westmoreland County is covered by the Bay Act. And it really affects you when you're in a 100-foot buffer. So if you can see water from your house, you're probably affected significantly, not just by the regular rules, but by more stringent regulations as well.
Thank you so much, that helps a lot. I had asked her to please help inform us, because there are questions all the time that come before us on the Bay Act, and I think it helps to have some guidelines. So I do recommend a brochure with some type of stipulations that we would all understand.
I might have used to do one, so when we get a new thing, like, I might be able to find.
Any other discussion?
Yes, I think there was a slight oversight on the agenda. We didn't have approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
No, because we just got the minutes
Meeting is
today.
Oh, I see,
And
so we're
nobody got
going,
time to read it, so that,
I read them before, I
Oh.
thought I was on the,
oh,
also I
okay.
read them as I was sitting here before the meeting.
Well, I
So
thought
we're
we
going to
did
approve them at the next meeting?
at the next meeting, and we'll do the next meeting's minutes as well.
Gotcha.
So we won't have, everybody doesn't have to rush through, okay?
We're still 2 months behind on minutes, and I was wondering, I was thrilled to see do you need some help? I would volunteer to, over the next month, to maybe do a draft of minutes for January and February, because I was gonna watch the YouTube, because I missed both of those meetings.
I think that'd be fantastic. You can certainly use the support. I know, when the new director comes in, that would be a breath of fresh air. What a great way to make him a fan of the planning commission.
Then I will get those and bring those. If I get them done, I won't be able to finish them until, start them until after the 7th, but I will watch those and take minutes and provide those.
Madam Chair, could I just ask one question for Lauren and
Yes.
Just to give us like a thumbnail sketch of what's happening with the, planning and zoning director? Do you have a plan of action?
I have somebody who's already accepted the position. They're going to be starting in about a week or two. So we're gonna be able to pick up where we left off.
Let me just say, wow.
That's wonderful, I've never seen action so fast. Thank you.
I have, one comment before we adjourn. This is the first meeting I've been back since I published an article in the Westmoreland News, and that was as a private citizen, although the Westmoreland News reported it as it was from the planning commission, and I wanted to be very clear and put it on record that that was sent specifically as a private citizen, and that while I was not the chairperson or holding a position here in order to do that, so it was really upsetting to me to see that the newspaper had printed it with that type of title. That was not the intention of it, and it does not represent the Quincy Beach Planning Commission. So I just wanted to, on record, state that, and hopefully the newspaper can get their act together over there.
And I wanted to give an update. At the last meeting, we had adopted or approved the document that was basically, done by Eric on, we're trying to get our message out that we are wanting new businesses in this town, business friendly town. I did two things. I approached the graphic artist who's giving me a proposal on laying it out, what it would cost. And I also approached one of the banks in town to underwrite at a minimum the graphic design, work. And, so I should be able to come back and have, hopefully in a month, that funded and ready, at least to go electronically up on the web, not only I know it's on the chamber site for right now, but,
I also,
in a more presentable format. I think that's a concern I had. And second of all, I wanted to have the recognition come to the town of Colonial Beach Planning Commission as having developed it with, credit to the chamber and downtown Colonial Beach for helping to distribute it. Is that appropriate? Are we comfortable with that?
I think that's excellent because it gives us support. I'd also like to recommend that either the mayor or the town manager write a letter in the forward to encourage more people to look at it.
And to that point, we also have a new logo that we should be able to provide you. So we can get sometime this following week, it's been approved.
I need that very soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we're not using this anymore?
We still have that logo, but the logo that I'm discussing was built by Flagship,
Yeah.
and you're gonna see it on
I'm
the tours.
familiar with it. I actually have been wondering how the two relate to each other.
So I think we're keeping the official seal, and then we're gonna have that as a logo, and that's one of the things that we're trying to promote. It might be great for your brochure. So we have that on digits, and we can link you up with that if that's something you're interested in.
Before we ask for to close, I'd like to, I know we've spent some time on chapter 4. I wonder if there's two members of the commission who would be willing to put together some ideas that we could revise this with the recommendations that we talked about.
I think it's fine.
I have two volunteers on my left, and I'll accept it. Thank you so much. Any other?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All agree?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for coming.
Nobody said, Susan, nobody
We
said.
adjourned at 7:25. Thank you.
I'm not getting younger. I was younger when I started, but I'm just more. But no, I really like that. No, yeah, well, part of the mitigation was trying to not make it cost effective. Sounds wonderful. Well, and it was grandfathered, actually, it was, I never grandfathered for another. I moved down. Oh, yeah. Well, then they filed either mitigation or.
Yeah, there's no mitigation. I'm gonna write the check.
The little ones, yeah. Anyway, I'm not really sure how that happened, but I think that I'm not the administrator, but the zoning. I know.
Yeah.
Yes, but that one, we followed it, I was our, we followed it back and we did mitigation. She had underneath of her driveway, filtration trenches, that stormwater.
I got it.
Okay, but also her lot was gravel because of the parking lot beforehand. So she just had all this like additional, I'm worried that it was gravel.
Sure.
She already had them for more.
For the one you don't park.
Yeah, but there was gravel at the end of that.
No, that's what's there today. How they use it,
She reviewed it. Yeah.
but it's, but they have.
Yeah, money on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Anything else by the way?
Oh, you're okay. Yeah, you need to ask. Okay, I was there. Yeah, I got that. Do it. Okay, I've got it. Okay, I'll be back. I will be back.
But it was,
Oh,
okay, sure.
my friend today, my house.